Hi, everybody. This is State Representative Marcus Riccelli, and we're going to get started in just another minute or two. We're just giving people some time to tune in or log on, and we'll be starting very shortly. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in on a Saturday. There's a lot of great weather out there, and there's a lot of other things to be doing. I'm State Representative Marcus Riccelli, and I'm joined today by Rep. Mike Boltz. And we're going to introduce ourselves in a bit, but I just wanted to thank Laura Hahn for bringing this event to our consideration. We're excited to be doing it with the 5 Mile neighborhood, and particularly want to thank her for all her work with the 5 Mile neighborhood information page to make sure that we're all informed on the prairie. So I just want to take a quick second to introduce myself, and then Rep. Boltz will as well. I'm really appreciative that he's joining me. One of the reasons that you have both the 3rd district and the 6th district here today is because the prairie is represented by 2 districts. As your state representative from the 3rd district, the boundaries up north here, particularly on the prairie for me, are 5 Mile Road. Goes basically east of 5 Mile Road onto St. Thomas More Way. It pops up a little bit east of the park as well. But my district covers downtown, Hilliard, Shadle, goes all the way south to 29th, and has the river bordering it. And I'll let Rep. Boltz in a second share a little bit of where he represents. All of our districts are roughly the same. All of you are represented by 2 state representatives and 1 state senator. Our districts currently are around 142,000 or so. That number will grow with the redistricting that's up, and the boundaries will change a bit. But for right now and through the end of this year, these are the current borderlines. So I serve on the Capital Budget Committee, the Transportation Committee. I serve on the Healthcare Committee and the Rules Committee. I also serve as a member of the House Democrats leadership team as the House Majority Whip. For me, what that means is making sure that our Spokane interests are represented around that leadership table, making sure that we're getting our fair share. And before I turn it over to Rep. Boltz, I just want to say, this is really kind of symbolic. I know it's interesting times, but we're not the other Washington. We work together, particularly here. I think we do a good job in Spokane to make sure we're getting our fair share, to make sure that we're doing our part to move our community forward. And we have a long history of doing that. And a lot of what we pass out of the legislature is bipartisan, but you will see that we have differences of opinion. My hope today is that you'll see the areas that we agree, some of the things we're working on, and that we can disagree but not be disagreeable, and make sure that we're listening to you. A robust democracy can only exist with an active and engaged citizenry. So thank you for those who put forward some questions, and thank you for those tuning in. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Representative Mike Boltz.
Thank you, Marcus. My name's Mike Boltz. I'm the representative from the 6th district. The 6th district begins up in kind of the Whitworth area where I live. It goes through 5 Mile Prairie, includes Medical Lake, Airway Heights, Cheney, the West Plains, and wraps around onto the South Hill. So it actually encompasses a lot of territory, and a lot of different territories from suburban to industrial to actually agricultural. The beginning of the Palouse is the southern border of my district, but most of the district, borders the 3rd district. So we share a lot of territory that kind of overlaps a little bit, including up in 5 Mile Prairie. And so we often get together and talk about different issues because of the proximity of our districts. And over the years, we've been able to, I think, work together on a number of policy issues. And it really started when I first came in the House. in 2017, we sat down and started working on capital projects together, even though I was not on the committee at the time. And so I think that was kind of an area where we could work together on capital and transportation issues that affect our region. And both of us are like-minded. We think region, not district, when we're looking at these things. I serve now on the Capital Budget Committee with Representative Riccelli and Transportation Committee with Representative Riccelli. So we're on two very important committees together for the region, and we try to work together as best we can on those type of issues. I'm also assistant ranking on transportation, and then my last committee I'm on is I'm ranking member on State Government and Tribal Relations Committee, which is another important one for the region and the district with the Spokane and the Kalispel tribes have a growing and a pretty big footprint up on the West Plains area. So I think you'll hear, and we both kind of agree that we can disagree on issues without being disagreeable. I don't think we've ever really yelled at each other or called each other names yet. Even though we disagree, we do share. There is I think a lot of what comes out of Olympia is bipartisan, and I like to see bills with 80+ votes on it. That's, to me, is generally something that is, agreeable by, the majority of both parties when they come out of the House. Some of the bills come out on straight party lines. Sometimes we, Republicans vote no, being in the minority, and we pick up a few Democrats that vote no with us. So, but overall, I would say that working together is a much more effective way than calling each other names across the aisle. So hopefully you see that today. Hopefully we don't break the rule today and get in fisticuffs or anything. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But so I look forward to the conversation and the discussion today. And thank you for Laura for putting this together. It's really appreciated to have these opportunities. So thank you.
Thanks, Rep. Boltz. And I agree with you a lot. A lot of the things that I've been honored to work on and pleased to work on. I prime sponsored the bill to create the WSU Medical School. That there's no way that would have moved forward without former State Senator Michael Baumgartner working with me closely and the delegation. There was a lot of key points where there was Republican and Democrat joining together to make sure that would move forward. So let's move on to one of our first questions that we received, and it is regarding daylight saving time. Scott Holmes asked a question. He says, have you heard of any U.S. congressional plans to further the state's request to go to daylight saving time year round? Well, that is a great question. I'm particularly interested in this. I prime sponsored the bill that was passed, and Rep. Boltz voted for and passed in a bipartisan fashion to move us to permanent daylight saving time. We unfortunately cannot do that without federal approval, but it was a strong signal, and we have other states that have joined us. And our goal is to move to permanent daylight saving across the region and the time zone, so there's not confusion. But the question around congressional plans. So there is a bill that was introduced by Senator Rubio, and there's a Republican congressman in the House that has, and some of our Democratic representatives and senators from Washington and Republicans, I believe, have signed on. One of the key changes between the last couple of years and now, though, is with the flip of the U.S. Senate, Senator Cantwell, I actually worked for at one point, is now in charge of the committee, the Commerce Committee, that would actually hear the bill. So I've been in communications with Senator Cantwell's office. Senator Murray has signed on to the Senator Rubio bill, and she's also been a big advocate. And so I think we're in a good position. The next step really is to get the bill heard. Now, there is another piece that could happen. The Secretary of Transportation, with the stroke of a pen, could move the whole time zone into permanent daylight saving time. So for those of you who are asking permanent daylight saving time, why not permanent standard time, or why ditch the switch? Hashtag ditch the switch is one of the things that I talked about. We know when it's light or longer, research has shown that crime will decrease. There's less strokes and cardiac arrest, less traffic collisions when it's lighter longer. There was some really good questions along the way that asked, well, wouldn't some of our kids at school bus stops be put in danger if it's lighter later? And so actually I asked the State Transportation Commission to do a report to gather data of people and the time zones and when accidents had occurred with youth, and they could not show any significant change if we went to daylight saving time and kids were going to school in the dark. There wasn't any kind of increase, and I'll be happy to share out for those who want that study. But I do think our time is now. If you're a parent, if you're a young parent, I heard a lot from young parents. It wreaks havoc on child sleep and the schedules. It personally is just something that's annoying. The time to change is now, and time has passed. So it's something that I've been working on, and I really appreciate that question. We're already on daylight saving time 8 months of the year. People don't realize that. So we're talking about just moving that to four more months. And so I am going to continue to advocate at the federal level. And I think we do have a little more of an opportunity now with one of our Washington State U.S. senators who is from a state that has passed to move it forward. I'll stop after one more thing. Idaho has said they'll move with our region if we do. Oregon's passed legislation, and California passed an initiative. So I think that there's strong interest in doing this. And I'll turn it over to Rep. Boltz to see if he has any comments, because I know I came out of the gun pretty hot because it's something I've been working on.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree. He has definitely taken the lead. This is an issue that he has been working on for a long time. Knows way more about it than I do. Has done all the research, and I voted for the bill. If he comes up with another bill, I told him I would sign it. It doesn't really matter which way he thinks is the best way to go, as long as we pick one and stick with it. I think is a good thing. It is, as a father of 3 kids, it is challenging sometimes. And I will tell you, the older you get, the more challenging it becomes. So I think kids and me, at least, getting older, it's harder to lose that hour of sleep or it's always nice to pick it up, but I do think it's time to change. And, a lot of this was set up originally, I think, when we were more of an agrarian society, and it was set up, kind of for the farmers, is what I recall reading about it. And technology, even for the farmers, I don't think that daylight matters as much to them anymore, as much as it did. And so I think it's time to change and just pick one and go with it.
Great. So I think we're going to move on, and Clint asked 3 questions kind of within one on the Long-Term Care Trust Act, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth. We'll both take a crack at all 3 of those questions. So Clint Buzzworth asked, why not make the long-term care benefit completely voluntary, since we can opt out and should above a certain income threshold? I'll turn that over to Rep. Boltz, and then I'll respond as well.
Yes, thank you. I think you said Clint asked this, so good question. I do believe this should be a voluntary program. I think if there's a need such as this, that the government should work to help foster and develop a marketplace rather than coming in and killing a marketplace. And that's kind of what happened with the long-term care. I'm hearing from all sorts of businesses and folks out there that finding private companies and underwriters to even come in and do business in Spokane's a challenge. And so I think that hopefully that's one of the areas that in this upcoming session, maybe we look at how we address that to give more availability and more choices to the consumer by really supplementing the private marketplace and making this more of a voluntary program. I think a lot of it is, I've heard from people who are close to retirement or close enough to start thinking about it. They don't even plan on living in Washington when they retire. They may have a second place that they've invested their whole life into, the lake at a cabin somewhere or someplace else where they plan to retire. Maybe Arizona is a big pick oftentimes because the climate's better. So they could be paying into this and never receive a benefit, and they know that right now. So I think a lot more flexibility and a lot more choices for the consumer and the taxpayer is warranted in this program.
Thanks, Rep. Boltz. Well, I have a little bit of a different take on this. I certainly have been hearing from folks with concerns. I think there's been a lot of emailing in, phone calls to our office, communication. So I do take that feedback very seriously. And I do think paying for your long-term care personal help. If you have diabetes, dementia, just a broken hip, medical bankruptcies are still the number one cause of bankruptcy in our country. And corporate long-term care insurance is very expensive. It's been unreliable. They're notorious for jacking up prices for no reason, particularly premiums, and they go out of business. And that's one of the things we looked at. A lot of the long-term care, because people are living longer and it's costly, are not actuarially sound. Now you couple that with the fact that so many of our aging population have not set aside dollars. And you can say, well, then that's their fault. What I would say is we're going to end up paying regardless. We want people to age in place if they can. So I think this offers a lot of solutions potentially for cost effectiveness in long-term care. I do think the messaging could have been stronger. Calling it the Long-Term Care Act. This is, with a $36,000 lifetime benefit. There's a lot of people who have talked about, well, I pay $3,000 or $4,000 for my loved one a month. And if they're in those long-term situations, it is not going to, pay indefinitely for that. But, I had a constituent talk to me. They were in a rental. They had a really great landlord that they loved working with. This constituent, his wife, had gone through some health issues, and she wasn't able to get in and out of their bathtub. The landlord was like, I can't afford to make the improvements, but if you can, you can stay here and we'll make sure that the rent's not increased. And this would be the perfect type of thing for that. If somebody needs a ramp, etc. So I do think that there are some things that, and we'll get into that in some of these later questions, that could be looked at. We do have a bipartisan commission that is looking at this, making sure that it will be actuarially sound, but also looking at potential changes that might be needed. And I think our goal is to improve and perfect policy. Many times it takes several iterations, and people have brought up some really good points of some things that we should look at. And I think maybe we can get into that into our next questions.
So my turn. I take it.
Go for it. Yeah. Why don't we do
All
that?
right. So this is another question on long-term care. Why are veterans with disability ratings subject to the LTC tax despite receiving better benefits from the VA? So that's a great question. I served in the Army, and it's been mid-late 80s, but when I got out, so it's been a long time. Thankfully, I didn't receive a disability from the service. So I'm broadly familiar with the benefits that they receive, and know a number of disabled veterans, from 20%, 80%, 100% disability. So I know they do have very good benefits. Rep Riccelli and I were talking a little bit before we went live, and it sounds like this is one of the issues that is being looked at by that commission. And I think I think if there was a piece that we could work on collectively, this would be certainly an area that you'd see a lot of bipartisan support and correct. But the answer is I don't think they should be subject to the long-term care if they have benefits available to them. And I know they do, and I know they're good benefits. They're solid benefits. It's backed by the federal government, and so I think that's definitely an area that if this program is going to continue, that's an area that we need to look at as its own separate piece, and how that manifests itself through the process. I look forward to hopefully being involved in it and having some discussions about that.
Thanks, Rep Boltz. And, thank you for your service, Rep Boltz. And for myself, I've had really an honor to work with a number of constituents, particularly our Gold Star families. And I worked with Rep Boltz actually as well. We renamed a highway out to our Eastern Washington Veterans Cemetery, the Gold Star Memorial Highway. We were able to work on some Gold Star license plates where some people were basically having to come up with documentation they never should have had to make sure that they got license plates that reflected, for those that wanted to, their Gold Star status and their sacrifices as a family members. So working for veterans is something that I'm, and particularly, in this community, something that has been just a moving experience for me, and I'm committed to doing. I appreciate Clint bringing this up. As I discussed, I understand there's some frustration And we are going to look at this. And I've been bringing this directly with our members House on the House Democratic side, Nicole Macri and Frank Chop, who are representatives of the commission. I've been talking with other members that are in districts that have high veteran populations to make sure that we can really look at this issue. One of the things is, though, we're a part-time legislature, a citizen legislature. On budget years, there are 105-day sessions. They start a little bit in late January. On non-budget years, there's 60-day sessions. We're in what's called the interim right now. So we are not in a place unless a special session is called. And I know many have discussed that, but unless the governor calls it a special session or the legislature would take some sort of action to do so, we're looking at not going back to session until January. But and I know that can be frustrating for some folks. I did really work with some of our nonpartisan staff. We have a lot of staff in the legislature. We have our legislative aides that help us. We have partisan staff that work for our respective caucuses. We also have nonpartisan staff that provide objective analysis and research. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I did have them do a general policy comparison. And this particular individual, I'm happy to share the whole policy paper. It doesn't quite get at, there are some questions, and some of it is regarding disability ratings and how it's hard to compare apples to apples with the Long-Term Care Trust Act and what folks get at various levels of disability ratings. But this said, while the benefits provided by the two systems are very similar in many respects, there are discernible differences in the extent which the benefits may be accessed. First, under the program, once a person meets the standards to become an eligible beneficiary, they receive benefit units that may be used for any type of approved service that the person chooses to access. Under the VA system, options for veterans and the levels and types of services are generally tied to the level or specific type of disability, which may limit some choice of services. Second, copays and contributions toward rent may apply to VA services. Well, these are not issues under the program, which is designed to give an upfront benefit. That is not to say that these payments will cover the full cost of service, but there's no upfront copay. Third, under the VA system, the benefits are not limited or financially capped. Well, the program does not have a limit. It is limited to a lifetime monetary of $36,500. It can be adjusted due to inflation. And then lastly, a general observation that is worth noting is that the program is designed to meet the needs of the civilian population that may come across disability for a variety of reasons, but most likely due to aging. Eligibility for the VA's long-term care options are more tailored to meet the needs of a military population that may have a younger membership that is coping with injuries related to their service, and they will likely be adjusting to life with disabilities for the long term. Still, with all that said, investigation is warranted. I commit to working on it. In fact, I'll commit here to seeing if we can partner, Rep. Boltz and I and other members of the legislature to really investigate and see if we can make changes. Can we put up the next question? Okay. Why didn't you allow the people of Washington to have a chance to vote on the LTC plan? Do you want me to go first, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. We are a representative government, and people are elected to represent constituents and the districts we represent and make decisions on their behalf. But we do have an initiative process here. And sometimes it's been very impactful in making significant changes. Sometimes it's been used to game the system and been overly influenced by outside interests and money, outside money, et cetera. I guess in this scenario, there was an attempt to just move forward with some of the interest because we think that, this is an issue we're going to have to address. I serve on our state's joint long-term care, aging, and disability committee. And the age wave is real. People are living longer, thankfully. Modern medicine is amazing. But people just haven't put away the savings to ensure that they can age with dignity. And so I do think that people came together and said, we need to address this. There was difference of opinions, and I think you're going to continue to see those difference of opinions. I think everybody, though, can agree that we have an age wage, and we don't want people to have to spend down to Medicaid or to not be able to stay at home if they can or not age with dignity.
Thank you, Marcus. So I have a little bit different spin on this. I think that these major policy issues should be taken to a vote of the people. And there's been a number of bills over the years that the Republican caucus has offered amendments on to do just that. Let the people decide. And we are representative Republican. We're paid to go represent peoples and do our best to kind of vote on their behalf and represent their interests. But again, we're still part-time legislatures. We're only in session part of the time, so we don't get an opportunity to go back and fix stuff and correct stuff until the following year. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this on how it actually works. But I do think important issues, especially big policy changes and big pocketbook issues like this, ought to be taken to a vote of the people and let them decide that, at the end of the day, they're ultimately the boss and in charge of us and in charge of the state budget and have their own interests and valid opinions. And we've been hearing a lot. This has been the long-term care act has been an ongoing concern from the contacts and the people reaching out to my office, and I know others, that it's just been a steady stream of business owners and employees and small business owners that are very much concerned about this. So this might have been one that probably should have maybe gone to the vote of the people.
All right. Okay, and I wanted to bring up, let me see, I forgot who wrote in. I think this was Levi, and I'm going to try and find it while we're going. But so what can be done about the noise from loud engines and aftermarket exhaust systems? You want to take a crack first, Mike?
Yeah, I think we have two questions. I think that the next question on this is about a local road. So in general, a lot of this stuff this would be specifically a local ordinance on the loud engines and the loud exhaust systems, which I share. Whoever sent this question in, I have a road nearby that you can hear them every once in a while on Friday nights or midnight or whenever, ripping down the road with their loud engines. And so it is frustrating and aggravating, but it is a local ordinance, and I would bet, as they say, dollars to donuts that they do have ordinance restricting excessive noise from motor vehicles. The problem is, and I would reference being in the Army. I was an MP in the Army. There are certain things that are almost impossible. Are very challenging to enforce, and this is one of them. You can have the ordinance, and by the time the police show up or out there, the car's gone or the cars are gone. Usually they travel in packs. There's usually more than one car ripping around with those loud engines, and by the time the police get there, they're long gone, and they pretty much have to catch them. Red-handed or beyond the scene already when it's happening. So it is a bit of a challenge for the local authorities. It is one of those local powers that are delegated to the state to enforce, or from the state to these for local, whether it's the city police or the county sheriffs, to enforce these ordinances. We don't have the state patrol have a limited jurisdiction, so we don't have a state police force to go out and enforce these local ordinances and these local policies.
I don't have much to add to that. I think we'll look at the next question, but I do think it's important that we just continue to kind of share, because there is some confusion about the differences of what can be handled at the federal level, the state level, and the local level, and some of it's even confusing up here on the prairie, because we have a city boundary too. So for this next one, what are the barriers to resurfacing Strong Road east of the roundabout Cedar? That road is that road's pretty bad. And I want you to know, as a citizen, I've reached out to our council members from the city level. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I think, you go up and down on those bumps. I'm surprised. Probably keep the local car shops in good business driving that road. But it is a safety issue. It leads to the park, etc. There's people that are riding their bikes up there. What I will say is I do want to share. So up here, if you're in the city limits, you probably realize that you are represented by Candace Mumm, City Council Member Mumm, and City Council Member Karen Stratton, at least through the next year and a half or so. Through the end of the year. There are some elections up right now that could change that. And Candace's email is cmum@spokanecity.org. Karen's email is kstratton@spokanecity.org. And then from a citywide, you can reach out to Mayor Nadine Woodward at mayor@spokanecity.org, and then Council President Brian Beggs at bbeggs, BBEGGS @spokanecity.org. But I just think, again, it brings another, we're happy to be conduits. And I certainly, we both serve on the transportation committee. One of the things that I'm in discussions about right now and trying to lead for our areas, if we would consider another transportation package, and if we would, some of those dollars inevitably would go to help support local roads, county and city roads, and some of the infrastructure investment. I think it'd be something that we could do right now to invigorate jobs, and I think put a lot of people to work, but also make sure that we're moving our economy forward. So that's just a pitch for something I'm working on. That might be a good lead on. I was going to say I'm not a lead into. I'm not sure if we can look if we've had any questions on YouTube. We did kind of take the questions that we received. I'll look on the 5 Mile neighborhood information page to see if there's any questions posted there. But it's probably then a time for us to kind of close by just thanking everybody for putting this together. And I think Rep Boltz, I mean, in the future too, we'd be excited to come to the neighborhood council or the neighborhood to do this type of thing in person at some point. Just appreciate your active engagement and interest. From my standpoint, we really wanted to emphasize the best way to contact our offices is through our official channels, and that is our legislative email and phone number. I have a e-newsletter that I send out. Please sign up for that. You can find that on my website. And maybe we can flash that up there for a second and come back to us while I'm talking. Peter, can you put up the contact information page? So I'll let this hang out for a bit, and hopefully you can still hear us. But we're pretty straightforward where to email us and talk us. This is the best way to reach us. We're not like congressional offices. We don't have 30 staffers. We actually just have a single staffer that we work with. But our job is to, be responsive to your needs. I really want to hold myself to that standard. I do feel like you're all my employers. And then there's some crossover, like Mike said, just because if maybe you're not inside the 3rd district, you're on their side. We really try and put our community first as Spokane legislators. So, Mike, do you have some things, and then maybe we can both close a little bit?
Yeah, I just want to echo, the best way to get a hold of us is through the official channels. That's, as Mark said, we do have a staffer, and that's kind of their job is to monitor those inputs. And we do, we do work. We get contacts from people from other legislative districts, and I think we do a bit of referrals back and forth between the various offices of the various districts. So even if you reach out to us and you're in the wrong district, oftentimes we'll be able to help you right away. But if not, we will be able to refer you to the right place. And so that's really the best way to get a hold of us is through those offices. It's the best way. I think we both have different jobs outside of the legislature, so we're not full-time into our email every day. I know both of us spend a lot of time on weekends and after hours getting caught up with stuff. But we do have limited resources, so we can't monitor everything, across the spectrum of technology. But we do have our official channels, and that is by far the best way to get a hold of us. So I think, going forward, I would echo Representative Riccelli's thoughts on this. Is maybe this is something we can continue to do in various places. I know, like as we discussed, there's multiple areas where the 3rd and the 6th intersect, and so So I think going forward, that's definitely something that I think if it definitely serves a good public interest to hear from people who disagree but aren't disagreeable. And I don't think we called anybody each other names today. So we're holding true.
Yeah. Well, and just as we close here, and I'll say a few things and turn over to you, Mike. I want to say, we've been able to accomplish a lot just working together, and this community has, and that's what we feel like our job is, from making sure that, we do really well with the capital budget, to our transportation, and then our overall operating budget which funds government, making sure that we're looking out for Spokane. And even if there's disagreements here and there, the people that are going into public service, I mean, our goal, I'm raising my kids right along y'all right here, and I want them to thrive. I want their neighbors to thrive. We have some real challenges in our community, from affordable healthcare to housing to job creation. Unfortunately, two of the most economically challenged census tracts in our state are right here in Spokane. I've been working a lot on food security issues. I went to Gonzaga, and the Jesuits there, I went to business school to try and make as much money as possible. And the Jesuits kind of instilled that service to other value. And I translated that to public service, but I also learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and, making sure we're looking out for our neighbor. And I think, one of the ways we do that is by working together. I just want to reiterate, we're not the other Washington. I hope what you see today is, like, I genuinely know that we can disagree, but Mike's going back to Olympia with the interests of the people he represents. And, we might have different ways to get there, but we care a whole lot about this community. And actually, for the most part, we want to work together when we can and make things work for Spokane. So this is just an example of that. I appreciate all the discussions on pages like the 5 Mile neighborhood information page. I know sometimes people say, like, well, he hasn't gotten back to us in, 4 or 5 hours. We do have other jobs. I work for Chaz Health part-time. Honestly, the best way, again, is to just communicate through our official channels in our office. I'm not one to shy away from discussions if I catch them on Facebook, but I am not monitoring it 24/7. So, but this was a great experience. Appreciate Laura for suggesting it. I really appreciate Mike for joining me, since, the Prairie is covered by 2 districts. And I want to thank Peter, who has been running this from behind the scenes. And I'll turn it over to Rep. Boltz for a close. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this and engage with you. A robust democracy can only exist with an active and engaged citizenry. Let's all keep doing our part.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everybody for putting this together. This was good. I think this is a good forum. This is a good event. It would be nice to be able to do stuff more in person. I'm, kind of tired of being in my basement and on Zoom meetings and team meetings and YouTubes and everything else. So hopefully we can start doing some live things and get out and talk to people again a little bit more consistently. So that I think activities like this is a positive way to reach out to people and talk about the issues that are on their mind. Like I said, we get gobs of phone calls and emails on a variety of topics, but it varies from area to area of town or time to time. So it's good to get it together. And so thank you again to Laura for putting this together. So really appreciate it and look forward to the next thing.
Awesome. And I think Peter's going to flash our contact information again, and we'll hold it up there for about a minute, and then the live feed will end. So thank you again. Have a great Saturday. It's beautiful out there. Let's soak up this awesome fall weekend.